Turning back now to the death of 20-year-old Daunte Wright in the Brooklyn Center in Minnesota. In Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, that's the name of the town. Tragedy with too many parallels in our recent past. It was 6 years ago yesterday that Freddie Gray was fatally hurt in the back of a police van. That story happened in Baltimore. Prosecutors say he had just told an officer, "I can't breathe," just as Eric Garner had done the year before and just as George Floyd did in his last moments alive in May of 2020.
In the book 5 Days, The Fiery Reckoning of an American City, now out in paperback, author Wes Moore recounts the events surrounding Freddie Gray's death. It's a book he wrote with journalist Erica Green. And Moore says the time is now to ask, how much have we learned? And we should point out he is also CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation, one of the nation's largest anti-poverty nonprofits. And he joins us now on CBS This Morning. Wes, good morning to you. Your day job at Robin Hood Foundation and your work as an author, they actually intersect. Poverty and racism are related, and I want to get to that. But first, you raised the question, what have we learned in the years since Freddie Gray? I'd love you to answer it.
Well, the honest answer is not enough, because, you know, we look at the fact that this book is coming out now and people say, well, isn't it timely that the paperback of 5 Days is coming out now? And the honest answer is, name a time when it wouldn't have been timely. That's the issue, is that we keep on seeing these things that are happening. And so this really is both about how are we addressing the immediate incidents that we continue to see. The death of Mr. Wright is not just unfortunate, it is inhumane, and it needs to be dealt with. But we also have to understand the structural challenges that we continue to see that allow these incidents to continue to happen, and just new names being placed after hashtags.
Yeah. So, Wes, what happens next? What do we do to break this cycle, to start working on that underlying system that you described so well in the afterword of this book?
Well, I think we need to have a very coordinated conversation and coordinated action plan that includes community, that includes law enforcement, that includes actually changing policies and laws. You know, we look at in my home state of Maryland, where we just actually had a police reform bill that was actually vetoed by our Republican governor, but overturned by 70% of the legislature, which puts together common sense laws, you know, such as that, you know, making body cameras mandatory for police, knowing that if a police officer who has multiple infractions is getting moved to different departments, that those new departments that they're going to should know about them. You know, basic common sense things that we all know have to be dealt with actually not just dealing with improper interaction between policing and community, but actually really fostering a better relationship between police and community as well.
Yeah, and when you talk about improper interaction, I keep thinking about Daunte Wright. We've been talking about it all morning. It started as a traffic stop because of expired tags, allegedly. They found out that he had a misdemeanor outstanding warrant, and it escalated from there. But the bottom line is he was unarmed, and the police officer said she thought she had a taser, that she was using her taser instead of a gun. You're a military guy, Wes. When you hear that, what do you think?
I'm baffled, honestly, because, you know, if someone I have so much training in this that if someone hands me a weapon, I can tell whether it's loaded or unloaded. You know, I can tell the caliber. That's how much training that I have in marksmanship and arms, because they knew that they were trusting me to go out and make life or death decisions every single day. You know, there's something in the military that we call muscle memory, where basically we want you to do things enough that in high-stress situations that there isn't a question. You just know properly how to respond. And the idea that you could not tell the difference or couldn't make a quick reaction difference between a firearm and a taser means there was not enough training or preparation for you to be able to handle either of those devices.
And you know what's interesting?
And so that's the thing that really hurts.
She's a training officer. She was training a rookie that day. That's what I find so mind-boggling. Right. But let's talk about Freddie Gray, because we all remember this case. I remember Freddie Gray's from Baltimore. You're from Baltimore. You said that Freddie Gray was the first funeral that you went to from someone that you didn't know, and that we really should pay attention to Freddie Gray's life. Why did you go to his funeral, and what was his life that you wanted us to know about him?
You know, I went to Freddie's funeral because I felt, you know, it was a story that I had both a local connection with. You know, this is a really big deal in Baltimore and also around the globe, and so I wanted to pay final respects. But it also did really strike me, Gayle, the fact that, you know, I was sitting here at a funeral of someone who I did not know in life, and that was part of the problem. Most of the people inside the church that day did not ever have a single conversation with Freddie. And when you look at Freddie's life, if you look at the fact that this was a young man who was born premature and underweight, it was a young man who was born into deep poverty. His mother lived in deep poverty her entire life. She never made it to high school. She couldn't read or write. You know, she was also battled addiction for much of her life. And so when Freddie was born, he was already exposed to heroin. When he gained enough weight to go out of the hospital, they moved into a housing project in West Baltimore. And that home, along with 480 other homes in 2009, were cited in a civil lawsuit because of the endemic levels of lead inside of that home. So Freddie Gray was born underweight, premature, exposed to heroin, born into deep poverty, and lead poisoned. And by that time in his life, he's 2 years old. If you look at why he was even arrested that day, he was arrested for making eye contact with police in a high poverty area, which in only some areas of this country is a crime. And that's the issue.
And that is the intersection of poverty and race. You say that each of these circumstances increases the probability that he's in that place at that time. And at one point, in one of the most powerful sentences in the book, you make the point that the system in some communities is its own kind of chokehold. But while we have you, because you're a veteran and because we've been reacting to that video out of Virginia with the lieutenant pulled from his vehicle and pepper sprayed, what was your reaction? What's going through your mind as you watch that?
Whoa, hold on. What's going on?
Horror. Absolute horror. And it's horror in the fact that, you know, everything that I was taught and told, everything that I know, I have a 7-year-old son, and I will express to him that if you happen to have an interaction with police, you know, keep your hands in clear sight. You know, don't make quick movements. Call them sir. You know, and you show that all these things, to include what car you're driving, your CV, your resume, the uniform you were wearing, it did not matter. And in fact, every time he tried to say, I don't understand, or his response when he said, I'm afraid to leave the vehicle, the officer's response back to him was, you should be.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I mean, that alone,
exactly.
That alone is an intolerable and fireable offense.
It certainly did strike me, Wes, because every parent I know, every black parent of color, I don't care if you have $2 or you have $2 million, has had the conversation with their sons about this is what you do if you're stopped by the police.
That's right.
And he did everything correctly and still ended up that way. I'm so glad he's alive, but I can't imagine the trauma that lieutenant is feeling today. It's heartbreaking to me. But before we go, we have to ask you about this. When do we start calling you, I don't want to stumble on this, gubernatorial candidate Wes Moore? When should we start doing that?
Well, I'm very seriously exploring the governor's race in Maryland right now as I'm, you know, getting ready to exit 4.5 really proud and successful years at Robin Hood. The reality is that we are at a turning point, and there are really big, crucial issues that we have to discuss. And so as I'm really going through and thinking about what are the big solutions, our ability to think big on these issues, I think, is now. And so it is something that I am very seriously exploring as I'm getting ready to step away from my role as CEO.
All right, Wes Moore, we'll be watching. When you're ready to announce, you know you have a place at the table.
I was going to say.
CBS This Morning with Tony Dokoupil, Anthony Mason, and Gayle King. We thank you very much. 5 Days is out now in paperback wherever you like to buy your books.